Hello, and welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm. It is the third day of the transfer window, the summer transfer window. Liverpool have made a flying start. Manchester City have flown out the blocks. They've been flying out the blocks since January, to be fair. And even Manchester United. And Arsenal, it's time to act. Welcome to the show. If you're tuning in for the first time, please do, of course, subscribe to Latte Firm, get involved in the chat, like the video, all that sort of stuff. It really helps on our way to 25,000 subs. And I am pleased to introduce tonight my special guest, lead scriptwriter at Tifo Football, Kaya Kaynak. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, FK. How are you, mate?
I'm really good, mate. Really good. Good to see you. We were supposed to be doing an end of season review, but I think everyone's so fed up with last season that we thought, scrap it and let's just look forward. That's the mentality to have. How have you been, man? Have you enjoying the sort of post-season break?
Yeah, I am. I think, to be honest, by the time we got to the end of the season with Arsenal, I think we were all glad to see the back of it, weren't we? It was a long one. There was a lot that went wrong. It never really felt like Arsenal got momentum going as well, I thought. It felt like there was never any period of the season where it's like, wow, we're up and running now. Whereas like in seasons gone by, it was the post-Dubai the season before or the pre-World Cup the season before that. And I never really felt like that was coming for Arsenal last season. So I'm glad to sort of be shot of it. I'm glad to be looking forward to the next season. I think this is a really exciting time for Arsenal, really, fun time for Arsenal as well, as we can all start to look to the future and, yeah, ready to chat about what's coming up.
Indeed. And what is coming up is, I guess, in a week's time, the first element of this transfer window shuts. And I don't know if you've been on the socials, Kaya, but Arsenal fans are losing their minds already. I've just mentioned three of our, I guess, rival clubs, but three of the big clubs going hard already. How is your mood ahead of this summer window? What are you feeling in terms of Arsenal?
Yeah, my mood's fine right now, to be honest. I think it is June 2nd or 3rd today. So the window's been open for a couple of days. And obviously, you mentioned the teams have gone early. And to be fair, there's a couple of players, especially to be honest, that Man United are signing that you think, wow, those look pretty good. And you don't associate with that Man U, but Cunha and Burma, if he does go to Man United, are two very good players. So it's always nerve-wracking to see the teams flying out of the blocks. Obviously, Liverpool are strengthening already, and they're showing signs of intent, which is a real throwing down the gauntlet for Arsenal. But I think it's going to be a big summer, and there's plenty of time before Arsenal get going again. They're not in the Club World Cup. They've got a nice bit of time off now, a nice bit of holiday, and I think let's stay calm for now. Maybe if we have the chat in a month's time and nothing's still happened, then we can start to panic.
Well, look, we will take this window one day at a time. And of course, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is the Daily Grind, a daily feature over this summer transfer window. The first one was our summer wish list with Alexander Moneypenny of the Different Knock and the Cannon podcast. Check it out on the channel feed. And last night, I was joined by Dobbo to look at our wide players. And just as I'd gone live, the news broke that Manchester United were about to sign Mbeumo. So really, really disappointing way to start the show, but there we are. You mentioned Liverpool, Kaya. Let's start there. The champions, they are acting seriously this window, and we've seen them lose Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's now gone to Real Madrid, as you know. Hopefully that slide's going to come up any minute now. Yes, there is. They have already announced their intent. Florian Wirtz, £100+ million. They're looking at Frimpong, who's obviously joined as a right back, and they're looking at Milos Kerkez down from Bournemouth. What do you make of what Arne Slot's doing at Anfield?
Yeah, I think obviously Liverpool last season were not perfect champions. I think we've seen Manchester City in seasons gone by, and they've looked pretty unbeatable. Arsenal have had amazing seasons and not been able to keep up with them. I think the frustration last season was Liverpool never looked like that. They had obvious weaknesses, and Arsenal were never in a position really to put pressure on them and see what they had, test their mettle. Liverpool relatively smooth sailing all the way throughout. They didn't really have any major injuries. They didn't lose too many big players for long periods of time, and they had no bad refereeing decisions as well, which I think I have to get that in at some point on an Arsenal podcast. But I think it's interesting to see how Arne Slot is building this squad, and he's building it more in his image. Obviously, last summer he only brought in Federico Chiesa, who I think made one league start all season. So he kind of was working with Klopp's squad. And now we're starting to see a bit more what Arne Slot is all about. And it's quite rare that you see a Premier League winning manager and you don't really know what his tactical philosophy is. But that's what kind of Liverpool are. It's a very strange setup. And the signings they make are really interesting ones. I mean, obviously, Bayer Leverkusen were a fantastic team under Xabi Alonso, one of the most exciting young teams in Europe. And it's interesting that two of the first few players that Liverpool have gone for have come from that team. And maybe that's a sign of how Arne Slot wants to play. That Xabi Alonso team were very possession focused. They like to dominate the ball. They like to progress through the middle. And that's interesting. Maybe it's sort of looking at a way of maybe not being so reliant on Mo Salah and finding other ways to attack as well. Florian Wirtz is really fascinating because you look at that Liverpool side and you start to think, is he going to play in a slightly deeper midfield role? Is he going to play as a 10? Is he going to play as a false 9? It'll be really interesting to see him sign for Liverpool. Obviously, Arsenal, I'd love to see him at Arsenal because he's a fantastic player and he's a really, really fun player as well. But we have players in that position and other priorities this summer. Frimpong, again, is another signing that suggests Liverpool want to attack. Same with Kirkez. They really want to get forward and sort of score more goals because I think a lot of this season they were a bit more slow and not always the most exciting to watch. It suggests this season they really want to go for it. And they're all three, even though 2 fullbacks, 3 very attacking signings and a lot more firepower to a Liverpool side that is already pretty strong up front.
Liverpool had a really impressive season last season. Of course, no one expected them to win the title. Arne Slot coming in, like you say, that one addition in Federico Chiesa. And they didn't add anybody else. And so they've kept the powder dry. There's a famous phrase that we all know and love or hate. And they are going big. And what's really impressive about Kaya, as I've just opened in the chat, by the way, do you think these 3 arrivals, chat, are going to mean that Liverpool are favourites for the title already next season? Get involved in that poll. But I think the speed of which they're acting, Arne Slot's spoken to Florian Wirtz personally. He's also been out to see Cherki of Lyon, who of course scored that great goal at Old Trafford in that amazing tie against United. But it looks like he might go now to City. They've just flown out the blocks, and with Michael Edwards back at the helm, he's doing some special things. And their reserve goalkeeper, I think, is going to go for as much as £20 million. So they're buying fast, they're selling hard, they look in good shape.
Yeah, Liverpool have always been good at selling in the market. That's something Arsenal could probably take note from, although in fairness, last summer they were pretty good with the sales, and you look at 32 million for Emile Smith-Rowe, 30 million for Eddie Nketiah. Those look like really good value now. And hopefully Arsenal can do similar things this summer. That'll be a big sort of thing on the to-do list for Andrea Berta, because there are players who are going to leave. But yeah, Liverpool are good in the transfer market. They always have been. And it's what's allowed them to keep pace in Manchester City for so long when they were spending all their millions. Liverpool obviously spent big too, but they were very selective in where they spent. And they're not a team that will just go and sign someone for the sake of it. They'll sign the right player. And I think that's really key. We saw that last season where they could have signed players. They were obviously in for Martin Zubimendi, who looks like he's coming to Arsenal now, but they wanted players in those positions. They tried, but when the right player wasn't there, they didn't just panic and get someone in, I suppose, like Arsenal did with Raheem Sterling. They were very patient and they waited for the right man. And they're a good team in the transfer market. The squad is going to be interesting. It'd be interesting to see who leaves Liverpool as well, because you would assume that a few more players are going to depart the club this summer. Nunez is going to leave. I think Jota is someone who may end up leaving as well. So they'll need depth in certain areas. But yeah, it looks like a really, really good squad. Obviously, Mamardashvili is coming in from Valencia too. So the goalkeeping position is well done. I think you don't want to give him too much credit for selling Kelleher for 20 odd, because he is, I think, the best backup goalkeeper in the Premier League. And, I think if Arsenal had a backup goalie of his quality, I think we'd all be very happy.
We did. I mean, we sold Aaron Ramsdale, right, for £30 million plus. So look, it's doable. And Michael Edwards, as hand of Arsenal, is obviously in the chat, has said, is the best in the business. And he's also just dropped this nugget. Luis Diaz has told Liverpool that he wants to leave. Interesting. Saudi Links today says, Vive Vlad. Look, the chat, I've been asking them, do the arrivals of Wirtz, Frimpong and potentially Kirkez make Liverpool automatic favourites? 72% of voters have said yes. That looks ominous. Let's move on to other rivals. Manchester City. Pep Guardiola has taken this season seriously, and it looks like they have continued their spending spree from January, Kaya. If I could just read out a couple of things now. I'm not going to go into the fees because I don't know exactly what they are, but Marmoush, Nico Gonzalez, Kusanov, Vitor Rice, of course. 3 of those are sort of reserve players. They're linked with Reinders from AC Milan, who looks like that's going to come in £58-60 million. Ryan Cherki of Lyon. 8 Nouri today from Wolverhampton Wanderers. And they're also sniffing around Livramento from Newcastle. So if they were to get all of these players, and that's 6, 7, 8 players since Arsenal last signed one, Pep's back, isn't he?
Hard to say, because a lot of those signings that came in January didn't necessarily improve Man City to an extent that they were able to be a dominant force at the level that we've seen them. Obviously, they did get to the FA Cup final and they got into the Champions League, but they kind of limped over the line in the Champions League race and obviously lost to Palace in the FA Cup. It's interesting. I think City, for all their attacking flair and obviously Erling Haaland being, as much as we enjoy singing Stay Humble with a naughty word attached to it at the Emirates this season, he is a very, very good player. But I think for Man City this season, a lot of their issue was firepower. They didn't seem as threatening going forward. Phil Foden was off it. Kevin De Bruyne was injured for a lot of the season. Jack Grealish has had his form issues. Savinho has done okay in his debut season. I'll expect more from him next season. Jeremy Doku seems like a player who is could be anything, but isn't quite sure of what he is yet. So there's a lot of potential in that City forward line, but I think they maybe need to strengthen there and maybe need to add a player there. But defensively, it's interesting that they're looking to build. Obviously, going for two fullbacks, and it's interesting you mentioned Aït-Nouri, and then I forgot who the right back was that you mentioned there. Livramento. Two very attacking fullbacks, not really sort of the old school inverted fullbacks. And Pep's played with these sort of centre backs as fullbacks over the past few seasons. Maybe it's a sign that he's going to evolve tactically again, and we're going to see sort of bombing wing backs coming back into fashion, and they'll be back, and Man City will start a new tactical vogue. That would be interesting. But yeah, they're building again. Obviously, Rodri is going to be back as well, which is going to be big.
Massive.
So yeah, they're a good team. And like I know they had an off season last season. You can't rule them out entirely. And Pep, like you say, I wouldn't go as far as say he's back yet, but he's certainly got something cooking, I would say.
Yeah, and listen, they've had a weird season in terms of transition. You know, Rodri missing the whole season was big for them. Kevin De Bruyne, of course, leaving, walking away with his head held high as a Premier League legend, as a Manchester City great. Lots of people in the chat talking about the 115, Kaya, and I know obviously you work within the industry, so I don't want to push you too much, but you know, what about the 115? I mean, it feels almost farcical that they're amidst this sort of long case. You know, I don't personally know the details. I'm not a legal expert, but we've all seen and read speculation and sort of articles about what might happen to them. But they're spending as if they just don't give a damn. I mean, this is wild, and I'm kind of envious of it.
Yeah, it's hard to. I guess Man City throughout this whole time they've had this hanging over them have never really changed their practices. They've not stopped signing players. Last summer, I know they didn't spend masses, but they still signed a few players, and yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot's changed. It does suggest that maybe they're confident of the outcome. You know, I think their chairman did an interview the other day where he, you know, didn't make reference to it, but didn't seem to be suggesting there was any signs of slowing down. And it's always hanging over Manchester City. That I don't think that's changed necessarily for them. Yeah, we still don't quite know the details of when it's all going to be done or what the punishment might be. It's going to be a long case, and I think Man City will be thinking, if we don't know when it's done, there's no point in us not spending now and rebuilding a squad that does need to be rebuilt. It was an aging squad at Manchester City. They need an injection of youth, and it looks like they're doing that.
A lot of people in the chat, including Patrick, saying that KDB is a massive hole for Manchester City. Of course, we've seen players come and go and retire at Arsenal Football Club, and they've been so ever difficult to replace. But Manchester City are on a spending spree, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. I've just asked the chat if they think that if City keep this level of spend, are they likely to pip us, or are they favourites to finish second given the Liverpool poll? And 52% of voters have said yes. So people unsure about City, maybe sharing your sentiment about Pep being back, Kaya. I do want to talk about Manchester United just a touch, only because, I mean, look, they're obviously not a rival, so they're so far down the table, but they are making moves. Today, Bruno Fernandes has been announced as staying on at his club. He released a statement saying that he could have gone to Saudi, could have taken that money, but he's staying. They have signed or agreed to sign Matheus Cunha, a player that I would have quite liked at Arsenal, for £62.5 million. And Bryan Mbeumo, I was, again, another player that I was looking forward to maybe Arsenal being linked with. But last night, David Ornstein dropping the bomber that he has agreed to move to Old Trafford. What do you make of their arrivals? And is this, I guess, does this move the needle for them?
Yeah, I think Cunha and Burmo coming in suggests that Man United are expecting to be a bit of a transition team maybe next season and a lot of counter-attack. But I think they're two players that really fit into the system. If you look at the way Cunha's played with Wolves, he played in a 5-3-2 setup with Strand Larsen as sort of the big man up top. But I think that could work in Man United if he plays in behind a striker. I know that striker would be Højlund or Xerxes, but if you allow him to sort of float in one of those 10 positions and Burma on the other side, suddenly Man United are looking a lot more of an attacking threat, which they haven't done all season. I think they scored less than 40 goals in the league or something crazy like that. They were awful going forward, and Garnacho is obviously going to leave by the sound of things, so that's big. It'd be interesting to see with Fernandes a bit deeper who they play alongside him, because whoever that is going to have a lot of running to do in that system, because two defensive midfielders in front of that back three, it's going to be a lot of work to do. I still think Man United have glaring issues within their squad. Obviously, The goalkeeper is a problem. They don't really have a right wing back of the elite quality that I think they need to get there. I'm yet to be fully impressed by Patrick Dorgu, but I'll give him a chance at left wing back. And defensively as well, they have some issues, and obviously up front, like I mentioned. But these are two signings that give them firepower and suggest that, they're serious about trying to get back to the top. It's unusual because Man United haven't made smart signings in the past. They've just gone for the big name. You look at a Casemiro or a Ronaldo or a Rafa Varane in the past, and it hasn't worked. Whereas these feel like maybe smaller names, but smarter names, and slightly concerning if Man United start getting their act together, because they do, for all the talk of financial issues, they are, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they will be able to bounce back eventually if they get back into Europe. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Sir Nicholas has just asked, why is FK's mic volume so low? Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Seems good to me.
Okay. Might just be your speaker, Sir Nicholas. Hopefully not me. Farhan says Manchester United are back to signing the best players from the smaller Premier League clubs, tried and tested, Premier League acclimatised, a bit like the old Liverpool model. So they've managed to hold Bruno Fernandes. That kind of poses the question how they're affording these two players and maybe one or two more. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Not really. I know that we're sort of planning a piece on the Athletic that's going to be coming up on those kind of things. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, you wonder if maybe Jim Ratcliffe is investing them or giving them a loan of some sort that's going to help get them through this difficult time, on the gamble that they'll get back into Europe and hopefully raise the money that way. But yeah, listen, if they spend themselves even further into debt, that might be more funny. So let's see.
Indeed. And one wild question for you, Kaya. We did the Winger sort of show last night, which has been very popular. Do check that out, guys, on the timeline. Alejandro Garnacho has been told to find a new club, has been told to pray he finds a new club. 20 years of age, 38 goals and assists over the last sort of 18, 20 months. 25, 30 million pounds. Would you?
Not for me. No. Listen, he's a good player, obviously. And like every time I watch him, I think, wow, there's a player in there. But the issue with Garnacho is, I think, the attitude. He's been left out. When Marcus Rashford was left out originally at that Manchester City game, I think it was when Amorim first took over, and Garnacho was also left out, and he's been in and out of the team. And if his attitude wasn't a problem, he'd be starting regularly for Manchester United and scoring lots of goals, because he does kind of fit into that system. But listen, I think if after a Europa League final, you're taking that time to remonstrate with the manager saying, I should have played, you're probably not the kind of guy. And you look at how much Mikel Arteta values culture and character and all those kind of things and non-negotiables. I don't think Garnacho would fit into that. And I think Viva Lad, I've just seen, has made a comment saying he's not better than Martinelli or Trossard. And to be honest, I have to agree with that. So yeah.
The kings and queens in the chat have spoken. We need much better. Hand of Arsenal says, someone arrest FK for that mere suggestion. And I will say, Taylor, FK trying to manifest this like I did with Scott McTominay. Look at him now. Right, let's move away from Manchester United. I asked the chat, tongue-in-cheek, do you think the arrivals of Mateus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo save them from relegation next season? And you'll be pleased to know that 70% of the chat have said yes, they do. Right, let's talk about Arsenal, Kaya, because 3 days in, people have lost their minds. We've talked about some of our rival clubs. It is time to act. Straight up, first of all, question. Sorry, I don't know what's happened to my English there. First question. What positions would you like to see Arsenal address and in priority? So, positions on the pitch, most important to nice to haves. What are you saying? What does Arteta need to do?
First of all, I'm going to go for striker, because it's not a hot take, but it's where Arsenal need to improve. I think that is high, but I think the actual I've said first of all, and I shouldn't have said it, because I think the most important thing actually for Arsenal is the left winger. I think the biggest.
Oh, he changed his mind in 30 seconds.
I realised what I said, and then I basically was trying to make a joke and it didn't work. So I've locked in now, and I'm gonna make a serious analysis, and I'm gonna say left wing, to be honest, is more important to me. I made this point on I was on the Oscars with Andrew a few weeks ago, and I made this point where I said Kai Havertz was on track to get 20 goals across the course of the season in all comps. If you've got a striker who's getting you that, you'll be okay. Especially if you've got a right winger in Bukayo Saka, who's probably going to get you 20 goals as well, and considerably more assists through the corners, through the free kicks, through his direct wing play and all that kind of stuff. I think that left wing position, the numbers that have been provided have not been good enough for quite a while now. I think Trossard is a great squad player. I think he's in and out. I don't think he necessarily gives Arsenal the consistency of output they need on that left-hand side. Martinelli, listen, we all love him. We all remember the guy who came from Brazil and shocked us, and £5 million for him is going to look like a bargain of the century in a few years' time. But I do think that his end product hasn't been good enough for what Arsenal have needed over these past few years. He's been a bit off it in terms of the system as well. I feel for him in the sense that he's asked to play out right on the left-hand side where he's a bit isolated and he has to beat defenders 1v1. And I don't think that's his strength. I think he's better running in behind and when he doesn't have to think so much. But I think Arsenal can improve. And if you look at the players who are being linked, a Nico Williams, a Jamie Gittins, a Rodrigo even, they're similar players to Martinelli, which suggests to me that Mikel Arteta thinks that area of the pitch can be improved as well. So I think more output from a left winger is key. Then I'm going to go number 2 and number 9 because I think obviously Arsenal need a striker who can score goals, and a bit of depth behind Kai Havertz is key. And listen, I think whoever comes in, I think Kai Havertz is going to play a fair amount this next season. I don't think we should think that whoever the striker is definitely going to be the nailed-on starter forever. But I think we've all seen for a while now that Arsenal need a bit more firepower. Mikel Arteta's only signed one out-and-out striker in his time at Arsenal, and that was Gabriel Jesus, and that hasn't worked out for a number of reasons. And he's had to redeploy players. Trossard's done a bit there. Havertz has done a bit there. Marino's done a bit there. But none of those guys were brought in to be an out-and-out number 9, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with a number 9. Third choice, obviously.
And just by the way, I know you mentioned Zubimendi. So left wide forward. We did a feature last night, of course, I've mentioned a couple of times. Who's your choice? I mean, there's noise about Anthony Gordon. There's noise around Semenyo. You sort of, what's your reaction to either of those two or anybody else? Rodrigo? I mean, who do you fancy? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I like Anthony Gordon. I think he's a good player. I think he's what Arsenal would need a bit on that side. He's nice and direct. He's quick. And he does have a bit of end products about him. He's not afraid to shoot. And I think, he would be a good player. Obviously, the dream, and I'm sure the chat will agree with this, is Nico Williams, because I think he was amazing at Euro 2024. We all remember that player, particularly in the final, who absolutely killed England and killed every team that Spain played throughout the tournament. And I think if you have that level of pace and threat and sort of creativity on the left-hand side, then you've got a real player and you've got a bit of something that can terrify opposition defences. Yeah, I'd say those two are good options. Obviously, Rodrigo's a fantastic player, but you'd have to look at the money involved. Jamie Gittins would be a bit more of a project signing because he's younger and he's a bit raw. But listen, my choice.
Romano is saying that Chelsea are apparently in for Gittins tonight. So that's according to the chat earlier on. I'm not sure if that's true, but I'm going by what you guys are saying. I mean, if that's true, then they've said no to Sancho and they're going to go out and get Gittins. I mean, you have to admire it.
Yeah, they haven't got enough wingers, so it's about time they signed one. And yeah.
Okay, so left wide forward, centre forward, Zubimendi, you were saying. Do you think even with Zubimendi coming in, we're short in midfield, or would that be adequate?
It depends what happens with Thomas Partey, I would say. I think if Thomas Partey does end up leaving and there's no movement on a contract as of yet that we're aware of, maybe Arsenal are a bit light in that position. Obviously, Rice can play both 6 and 8, but you've only got one orthodox out-and-out 6 who's probably going to play there all the time in Zubimendi. But I think you can get by. Marino's, if he stays fit, is a good enough option. Ethan can obviously play in the 8 role and Rice can go back. Ødegaard can play there. Miles can even move into the 6th position. So you'd probably be all right. But I think if this season's taught us anything, being just about all right in terms of squad depth is a massive risk. And knowing Arsenal's luck, that risk would be exposed. So I wouldn't feel fully comfortable about it. I'll be honest. I'd be a bit concerned. But it doesn't look like they're going to be bringing in anyone in that position beyond Zubimendi. So, midfield, I think they'd need another body, but I don't know if they'd get it.
Yeah, look, this isn't a dig at you, but I said this on Pedro's Arsenal Opinion podcast over the weekend, Le Grove, if you guys know that you're watching. I'm sick and tired of Arsenal thinking like, oh, yeah, we might just about have enough. You cannot be stacked with too many good players. You cannot never, ever have enough good players. Like, we need to make sure that we have enough depth to go strong in both of our primary competitions, if you like, Kaya, Premier League, Champions League. We need to be a club of our size, stature and status and history and pedigree and caliber going strong on all 4 fronts. So let's make sure we do what we have to do. If that means getting in another body, I'd love to see Zubimendi and maybe someone like Morgan Rogers come in to play alongside Declan Rice. Again, depending on who you believe in the socials, as someone that I really trust and believe, and I believe that Thomas Partey will sign a new contract in the coming days, so he will probably stay. We can talk about the ramifications of all of that sort of stuff another time, but it is serious. And moving away from midfield, defensively, it looks like Kieran Tierney is going to go with his head held high. We're maybe going to be open to offers for Zinchenko, potentially even Kivior. Is defense an area of weakness for us, do you think, that we need to address?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, Tierney's obviously going to leave. Zinchenko, it wouldn't be surprising if he did leave. Kivior's departure is a bit more interesting because I think a lot of that depends on Gabriel's fitness after his injury. Obviously, I think he got his injury against Fulham at the start of March, was it? And by the time he comes back, hopefully in August, that will have been 5 months without playing any sort of first-team football. To go straight back after a hamstring injury like that from 0 to 100, particularly in a position like centre-back at Arsenal, that would be a big ask. And listen, Arsenal have players who could fill in. And I know you said you don't like people who filling in, because I agree with you on that front. But Calafiori could play there. Hopefully Ben White will be a bit fitter and he could play there if needs be. But we don't know what's happening with Jurrien Timber as well. His fitness is a bit of a concern. Obviously, he's had surgery and he's going to be out for a few weeks, potentially more. Saliba's had a hamstring injury as well. So I don't know. I think Tomiyasu obviously also isn't going to be back for a while. So I think it would be foolish to let Kivior go now. I get why, into the sense that I think he's got 2 years left in his contract, and obviously now will be the time we could probably get the most money for him because his value will be high because he was so good towards the end of the season, and hopefully he'll have a good summer, maybe play a couple of games in Poland, and I think there's lots of interest, particularly from Italy. So if you were to sell now, you'd be striking while the iron is hot, but you'd also leave yourself, I think, a little bit short at the back, particularly with Calafiori's injury problems. White and Timber have had their injury problems. Tomiyasu's had his injury problems. Gabriel Saliba, as we mentioned, pretty much the only one who hasn't is Miles Lewis-Skelly. So, knock on wood that he stays fit. But yeah, I think it would be a big risk letting Kivior go right now with the fitness issues and the rest of the defense. If you do let him go, you have to replace him. And that would be important.
Indeed, yeah. And Vlad's just reminded me those Dean Howson links probably suggest that we're in for opportunities at centre back. Listen, it wouldn't be unlike Mikel Arteta. Sorry, it would be unlike Mikel Arteta to go throughout a window without adding at least a left back. But we should watch that. And I think we're both in agreement that we need a backup goalkeeper. So we're talking, left wide forward, centre forward, midfielder, plus Zubimendi, defensive player, goalkeeper. 6 editions. I've asked the chat, how many players do you think Arsenal will sign? 1 to 2, 7%, 3 to 4, 60%, 5 to 6, 33%, and 7 plus 0. It's going to be
that'd be a busy week.
Could you imagine? By the way, hundreds of you watching live right now on YouTube. Please do like the video. Subscribe if you're new. Daily grind, daily content throughout the entire transfer window. Can you believe it? Listen, it's just going to be a very, very busy few weeks, couple of months coming up. I think, Kaya, we're going to leave it there. I really appreciate you coming on to Latte Firm, the Daily Grind today. I mean, that was it. Just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, Liverpool moving mad, Manchester City spending like there's no tomorrow, like there's no charges. United are making moves in this market. And there are other clubs who are yet to do their business. I mean, Newcastle today being linked with Joao Pedro. No, that doesn't mean Alex Isak is on the move before anyone gets too excited. Spurs, after their Europa triumph, are they going to go into the market? There's going to be a lot to look forward to. Oslo Guna just caught my eye, says the chat is real and rational tonight. That is why I love you guys. I really appreciate you guys watching here on Latte Femme. If anybody wants to follow Kaya, he's available at Kaya Kaynak 97, lead scriptwriter at Tifo Football. Any special projects or anything you want to mention before you leave?
We've got a fun video coming up on Xabi Alonso and what he will be like at Real Madrid. So I know
with or without Zubimendi.
With or without Zubimendi. I know everyone's very Arsenal focused in this chat, but if you're interested in what's coming at Real Madrid, and it's exciting times for them because the Club World Cup's coming up, it'll be fascinating to see how they play in this coming season. It's a really interesting video that we've got coming up. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Appreciate it. Listen, Kaya, look after yourself. Enjoy the summer. We will have you back on if you would be so kind.
Of course.
And those of you watching, do check out the summer wish list on the timeline. The winger debate that we had last night was really good. A deep dive sort of into individual options that are available to Arsenal. And of course, tonight, Kaya, thank you. Look after yourselves. Have a good evening. Until tomorrow. Bye for now.